You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here at AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
You should introduce me as the man who is batting 1,000.
For those who don't know, Stevie's already starting the show by gloating about his picks from last weekend's 211 UFC show.
That's right. I went 5-0. In fact, I'm tied with the Law's own John Pollock, who also went a perfect 5-0 in Wrestling Observer picks.
Jeez, there should be some side bet on who's going to win between you and John.
I fought the Law and we tied.
Sure, that's how the song goes, my friend.
Did you see they did a live broadcast on Monday night?
Oh no, what?
Yeah, they actually did review a Raw. They broadcast it over YouTube live as they were recording the show.
Oh, nice.
So I got to see John and Way exchanging dirty looks as they were going back and forth about the segments on Raw.
Oh man. Alright, so we've got Bellator to talk about this week. We got some news to get to, including certain Luke Rockhold news involving Dana White. But we should talk about UFC 211 to start the show.
Yes, let's talk about the fact that, as I predicted correctly, both champions retained at UFC 211.
Yeah, really going out on a limb there, boss.
Well, the odds didn't seem to put them as huge favorites. We ran down the odds on last week's show, and neither one of them was favorited by a sizable margin.
Well, let's start at the bottom, and then we'll go right to the main event. For the Fight Pass prelims, there was one result here that really was interesting in my opinion. That was Courtney Casey beating Jessica Aguilar with a unanimous decision. Not even close, Stevie. 3-0 here.
Yeah, she pretty much got wiped off the map here. It's not looking good for her.
She's either going to be cut or her next fight is could be a loser leaves town type situation here.
I mean, I was saying it was bad for her before this, and now with straight losses to Daley and Casey, now it's really looking bad.
Yeah, I mean, they really have to. The opponent's going to be very selective. I mean, it's got to be someone that, I'm not saying give her a tomato can, but you have to give her someone that, the thing is, the women's strawweights, there's no real easy fights in that division.
No, and
pretty competitive.
It is, but it's not like she wasn't being competitive in World Series of Fighting in Bellator. It's just she came to UFC because they wouldn't give her enough competition to stay active, and now that she's got all that competition, it's suddenly not going her way.
Fair enough. Let's go to the prelims on FX. James Vick beating Marco Polo Reis. Didn't take long at 2:39 of the first round.
Yeah, in fact, all of these fights on FX were finishes other than the one that was a no contest, but you're going to get to that in a minute.
Chase Sherman beat Rashad Coulter, knocked him out with an elbow at 3:36 of the second round. Jason Knight beating Chaz Skelly, TKO at 39 seconds of the third round.
And before you get to the main event of the prelims, I would like to point out that last week I mentioned that Jared Gordon had earned his way onto this card. He pulled out with a stomach illness, so he didn't get to fight on this card.
I heard it was food poisoning.
Well, stomach illness, food poisoning, whatever it was, his fight with Michael Quinones was scratched because he could not compete.
And we were talking about the last week's show about Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier could steal the show. And it was definitely newsworthy.
Yeah, although what a bummer of a way to head into the pay-per-view.
Now, when you look at this fight, it was pretty good for what it was until the second round at the 4:12 mark, where Eddie Alvarez hit Dustin Poirier with a illegal knee, and it basically was so bad that the ref called off the fight due to a no contest.
Right. There was no deducting a point. It was not a situation where it was medically advisable for Poirier to continue.
And all the replay, it was a down opponent. I haven't seen a single person say it was legal.
Yeah, and this is not one of those patty cake situations that Herb Dean and John McCarthy always complain about, where a guy is putting his hand down and bringing it up and putting his hand down and bringing it up. He was clearly down.
Yeah, and Poirier has gone on to say he's already appealing the decision of a no contest. He wants it overturned to a disqualification. He wants his money, basically, and also he wants to fight Alvarez again so he can, quote, beat his ass again.
Well, that's all fair to say, but usually the referee's decision will stand, and if they don't think that Alvarez did it maliciously, like he might have landed it illegally, but he might not have been looking to just keep flagrantly doing illegal things. If they feel that it was just in the heat of the moment and he made a bad judgment, then they aren't going to turn that into a disqualification.
But the question is more not if we get the rematch, but when.
I would think you would want him to sit on the sidelines for a few months after getting his bell rung like that. So if they do a rematch between these two, it'd have to wait at least till like August, September.
Yeah, you could put that. Actually, you know what? You could probably make this the main event of a fight night or even a Fox show.
Yeah.
You probably build it up. These two guys definitely are main event caliber for a fight. Now, you want main event a pay-per-view with it, but I would definitely main event a TV show with this.
Or it could be the opening fight of a pay-per-view.
Definitely, but let's talk about that opening fight of this pay-per-view with David Branch, the former World Series of Fighting champion, against
Dual champion.
Dual champion, beating Krzysztof Joko with a split decision. Did the right man win here, Stevie?
According to Joko, no, but I don't have a problem with the result here, especially since I picked Branch, so I'm all good with that.
Usually when it's a split decision, I'll go back the next day and rewatch the fight just to see maybe I missed something the first time. No, I still had 2 rounds to 1. Nothing really changed here in my opinion, but I mean, if you don't agree, if you think Joko won, give us a shout on Twitter. Let us know. Let us know what rounds you think for Joko. But Branch here, how do I say this? I think what he wanted to prove, it didn't quite come out in this fight. If you know what I mean. Like, I think he wanted to have a dominant performance and didn't translate that way in the cage.
Right. I'm almost wanting to say it was, he's experienced enough and good enough that I can't really call it octagon jitters as such because he's been there before, he's back there now. But maybe it's more like, ranking jitters, like, I'm coming off being a dual champion in another promotion and I want to be in the rankings, so I really got to go out there and just blow away my opponent and show I deserve to be, and maybe that just got into his head.
Now, before we talk about the next fight, you want to mention Henry Cejudo and Sergio Pettis?
Yeah, let's talk about that situation as well, because what we had was a situation that was very similar to what's coming up with Bellator this week, where an injury has forced the fight to be canceled because Henry Cejudo did something to his hand where he wasn't going to be able to use it.
And sometimes you get injured in training. It happens all the time, but not to the point where, you get pulled from a fight. And if a fighter has a hand injury, you really can't fake that. A simple x-ray will show if it's broken. It's not something you can fight with if it's a broken hand. I mean, if you break your hand in the fight, it's one thing, but you can't go into a fight with a broken hand. No commission in their right mind, not even Texas would let you do that.
No, of course not.
So I feel bad for Cejudo. I really was interested in this fight. I think this fight you might have gotten wrong in your picks, but we'll never know until they fight.
And who knows, by then I may feel completely differently because they may have fought other opponents and they may be completely different trajectories at that point.
Absolutely. Now, what about Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez?
Yeah, and this is another one of those reasons where I say Yair's good, but Frankie, you should never doubt Frankie. And I made this point very clearly, like, his stature right now in the featherweight division is, I'll beat everybody except possibly the champion or the interim champion. He's that good. And Yair is that good in the future. He's just not there right now because he got hurt so badly by the end of the second round that the doctor had to step in and say, no, you can't continue this fight. You're done.
I can fight. No, son, you can't.
No.
Like, no. When it comes to this fight, I'm going to use an old TNA reference here, but it was like Rodriguez was fighting on Planet Edgar.
Exactly. And Frankie has some of the nastiest hands of anybody in the featherweight division.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on Planet Frankie and he's hitting you with everything, you're feeling the gravity of that planet.
And the thing is, and I hate saying this because I'm going to sound like a total mark, but I think Frankie's handwork, it's gotten better, which is scary to say.
No, I totally believe that because I would say the exact same thing about having interviewed Marlon Moraes because he trains in the same camp as Frankie, and he always talks about how his hand speed is getting so much better just working with Frankie. I think it's one of those iron sharpens iron kind of things where they got so many killers in that team right now that they're all getting good.
Yeah. What about Jorge Masvidal and Damian Maia?
This one is probably more controversial than the Branch and Joko fight.
Yeah. This was a lot closer. I'm tempted to watch this fight a third time because I watched it twice and I had two different results.
All right, well, let me ask you the most pointed, perhaps the most important question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Maia was out of gas in the third round?
You know, not entirely, but it was definitely on fumes.
Yeah, and if you wanted to make the case, that third round would be the tipping point either way in the fight. Like, if you think Maia won, then you probably had him winning the first two. And if you think Masvidal won, you definitely gave him the third.
That's the thing. That third round, Maia, I think it was halfway through that third round where he had that sign of, I think he's done and Masvidal's got to jump here to win the fight because that going into the third round, if you have that fight tied at 1, you want to go out. I'm not sure what the corner told him, between rounds, but
well,
I would tell him.
Whatever you told Masvidal, it should have been, you need to go out there and kill him in this third round because you can't count on the judges.
No, never count on the judges. Never leave it to the judges. We all know that, but it's a point where I'm not saying Maia got by on his name here, but I want to see a rematch.
Well, Maia may have other plans now that he's won this fight. We're going to get to that in the news.
Yeah. Let's go on to the first title fight here. Joanna Champion against Jessica Andrade. And this one went all 5 rounds, and it wasn't even close, Stevie.
No. In fact, I would go so far as to say, out of Joanna Jędrzejczyk's title fights, this might have been her most definitive because we've had a couple that we've talked about on this show where in the early rounds she was getting hurt, and then in the later rounds her endurance, her cardio, her fortitude took over. This time it wasn't the comeback story. This time it was, I'm the better woman in every round of this fight.
There's not much to say here because it was such a dominant performance.
One-sided.
Yeah.
Like I said, this was a champion being a champion. This was, you're not on my level, and I'm going to show everybody that you're not.
Some fighters say, they're going to retire undefeated. Joanna's saying she's going to retire as champion. Well, yeah. I mean, based on that last fight, I could definitely see that.
Name a strawweight in this entire division in UFC that's on her level right now. You can't.
No, I can't.
I'm not saying somebody might not come along in the next year or two, but at this exact time, at the exact recording of this show, that person doesn't exist because it's not Kowalkiewicz, it's not Andrade, it might be Rose, but like I said, that's a year or two down the road, maybe.
Yeah, there's going to be a Holly Holm that will come by. And we're going to see it. I mean, one day we're going to see it. Or a Weidman, if you want to use the Anderson Silva example.
Right. Somebody unexpected will come along. Like, she'll get a fight, say, with Cynthia Calvillo, and nobody will be expecting it, and Cynthia will just totally rock her. But that day hasn't come yet.
No. Well, let's talk about the main event here, and it was Stipe Miocic against JDS Junior Dos Santos for the heavyweight title, and this fight went all 2 minutes and 22 seconds.
Now, this was definitive in an entirely different way. We we don't need to talk about 5 full rounds of a champion proving something, because all you needed to prove here was that Stipe could outbox Junior, and Junior is renowned as possibly the best technical boxing striker of the UFC heavyweights, but for all that technical acumen, all you need is one good shot from Stipe, and he makes people fall down. And he landed one really, really good shot.
Somebody needs to make a gif of Miocic knocking out JDS and then checking on him afterwards and just have the Mortal Kombat friendship. Like, he didn't want to hurt his friend here.
No, yeah, these two
obvious.
guys genuinely like each other. I think he was happy when it got waved off because he didn't want to keep hitting him.
No. And apparently JDS, just about a few seconds before he got knocked out, was thinking, I'm doing it, I'm going to win. Boom. And no, you're not.
I'm sure Fabricio Verdum thought the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure Cain Velasquez thought the same thing.
Yeah, have we now finally come to the point where we can all admit that Stipe Miocic is one bad motherfucker?
Yeah, there's no doubting that. No one doubted that before the fight. No one's doubting it after the fight. It's just he gives you that false sense of hope. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, what happened? You get hit by a truck. What? Oh, I got knocked out. Okay.
Yeah, this is 5 straight fights now, from Hunt to Arlovsky to Verdum to Overeem to JDS. You know, he has burned his way through a murderer's row of heavyweights. He is now clearly uncontested on top of the mountain. He is number 1. No doubt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is, speaking of someone who basically it's him and everybody, or the champion and everybody else. Who do you put in front of him? I mean, seriously, who?
Yeah, this is another one of those situations where it might take 6 months to a year for a contender to emerge. We might be looking down the road to say, like, you know, Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, or Alexander Volkov, you know, one of those 3 guys going on a monster run and earning their way to a title shot. It's going to take a little while.
So, I was thinking about this. You've got DJ, Joanna Champion, Miocic. How many champions, you know, are above the rest of their weight class? I mean, how many weight classes are competitive as far as the champion, you know, this guy could lose. This guy isn't dominant as some other champions.
I'm thinking if you're looking at vulnerable champions, like champions that could change hands, you're looking, I hate to say it, and I mean no disrespect to anybody in either of these weight classes, I'm saying welterweight and middleweight.
Yeah, I mean, I could
Bisping,
definitely see that, yeah.
Bisping is up there in age, and he has the eye condition, so lightning could strike at any time. I mean, Dan Henderson nearly beat him. That tells you something. Dan, at his age, nearly beat Bisping for the title. And
what about featherweight?
I'll get to featherweight in a minute. I want to reaffirm the point by what I'm saying about welterweight and middleweight, because welterweight, Woodley has had 2 fights now with Wonder Boy, where each time you were thinking, there's a real possibility that Wonder Boy is walking out of here with the title.
Yeah. I could definitely agree with that. I'm thinking more featherweight, going down the weight classes here, and, you know, it's not a dominant picture there. I mean, the 155 title basically is held up right now.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put it this way for featherweight, since you're putting a point out there for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the Vegas odds would be, but my personal odds, if Frankie Edgar fought Max Holloway right now, even money, I would say that fight could go either way. If it was Vegas odds, it'd probably be like plus 110, minus 110. It'd be that close.
That's a money fight.
Yeah.
That's a money fight. I'd say pay-per-view.
Yeah. Edgar Holloway, I don't know if that's money to the masses, but to you and me, that's money.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about that whatsoever. I'm just trying to figure out if we'll see that fight next. Because, I mean, when it comes to matchmaking, and we'll get to a certain matchmaker as well in the news, but, I mean, there's some intriguing matchups coming up this summer, that's for sure.
Oh, yes.
Now, let's talk some news, and let's in fact talk about a certain matchmaker, as Joe Silva will be inducted in the contributor class for the 2017 UFC Hall of Fame.
Right. They sent out that announcement, I believe, during UFC 211. It popped in my email, and I was like, well, that's deserved. Joe Silva arguably is one of the greatest matchmakers in the history of the sport, and certainly I would think you could argue he's the best UFC has ever had.
Yeah, no, definitely when you think about as far as the guy behind the screen or the guy behind the glass, so to speak, you think Joe Silva.
Indeed.
Now, they did a summer kickoff press conference, and I was getting nervous because sometimes they announce in these summer kickoffs the schedule for the rest of the year, and I was wondering if we're going to get any major cities like they did last year, or 2 years ago now. But they did have a big announcement, and it was John Jones and Daniel Cormier, and I'm not going to get into what was said because, well, I'm trying not to get an explicit rating on this show right now, but it was pretty lewd, and let's just say it involved some outrageous claims, and yeah, if you want to say it, Stevie, go for it, but I was appalled, and it takes a lot to appall me these days.
No, I'm not going to quote any of it.
So, apparently Vegas has already put out original odds for this fight rematch here, and they're actually favoring Jones.
See,
I don't know.
I get that because technically, and you like to talk about lineal champions a lot, technically he's the lineal champion because nobody ever beat him for the title. But he's so problematic at this point with his personal life and his personal problems and his lack of focus that it's hard for me to just completely go with the idea that because he beat Cormier before, he'll beat him again. I have to think there's got to be a seed of doubt in his mind at this point. Just because he used to be the best and used to be super dominant doesn't mean that that is still the way he is now. But that's why they fight the fights. He's got to go out there and prove that he's gotten past all of that.
Absolutely. Now, it looks like the GSP Bisping fight won't be happening right away. In fact, it looks like Yoel Romero is going to be getting that shot.
I was about to say right away. No, not at all, because Dana White is pissed. He basically said, "We're not waiting around for you, George. Fuck it."
Well, he wanted to wait until October or later, and Dana White's like, no, that's too late. So it looks like Romero is the number one contender here, and Vegas is a big Yoel Romero fan, not giving Bisping the due respect here.
Well, we did sort of hint at that when we talked about which divisions are vulnerable, and yeah, I hate to say it, but man, if Romero hit him even one time the way Dan Henderson hit him, Bisping's night would be over.
Can you imagine he hits him in his bad eye?
Oh, yeah, I don't even want to contemplate that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that could be a career ender right there. One good shot, because Bisping has had problems with that one eye, and you kind of need both eyes if you're fighting Romero at 100%. You don't want to be caught off guard because you'll be on the canvas before you can say hi, you know? Now, you and I both like the good smack talk here and there. And there's a rumored fight we talked about, Tyrone Woodley. Apparently Damian Maia, that could be his next fight.
I'm pretty sure Dana has gone on the record as saying Maia has earned it.
Yeah, well, he says one thing until we get the actual announcement on a date and a place, then that's when I'll believe it. But Woodley's already started the smack talk, and as only he can, and he said, quote, "Pack a lunch if you think you're going to jump on my back."
Well, I'm sure Dana would have an appropriate response for that. He'd say, "Pack a pillow because you're going to put these people to sleep."
Yeah. Brought to you by, brought to you by Sears. Our pillows are half price this weekend.
No,
that's what he going to say.
Brought to you by Slumberland Inn, although you probably don't have those where you live.
No, we don't.
It's a bedding store.
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, we talked about exciting fighters. We talked about not exciting fighters.
See, it's not even that I think Woodley is not exciting. I don't want people to read that on my comment. I'm just saying the perception is in the last fight with Thompson, he didn't go out there and deliver a good fight.
Now, we did hear some news about Anthony Johnson's new job, I guess you could say.
Smoke weed every day.
That should be a drop on this show as I cough as well. That's hilarious.
Yeah, puff, puff, pass, Peter.
Oh, jeez. I thought he was going to be like working with the NFL as a strength and conditioning coach, but this is much, much different than what I thought.
No, he's got a grow farm and he's got a partner and they're trying to make it all legal.
Yeah, and did you hear Ian McCall's comments?
No, what did he say about it?
Get a good lawyer.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh, man. I think, if it's profitable and he's in a state that has legalized it, why not?
Right, but to me it sounded like there was some question of that. I don't know what state they're incorporated in, but clearly it's not one where it's legal for everyone all the time.
No, but it's one of those situations where I think he was concerned about about like concussions and getting beat up and long-term effects of fighting. So if he wants to duck out early and make a dime while doing it, go for it.
Yeah, make a dime on a dime.
Ouch. But
you set yourself up for that.
I did. Did you hear GSP's comments about Anderson Silva?
Okay, I probably did, but refresh our audience.
He doesn't want to fight Silva, saying Anderson's not the same as he was.
You know, I kind of said that a show or two ago when I talked about how stupid it would be for Anderson to fight Romero.
And I think since his first fight with Weidman, he hasn't been the same fighter.
No, I think that's pretty much where his career took a turn for the worse. I do not dispute that.
Now, Christian Columba and Damian Grabowski at UFC Fight Night 109 in Sweden coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend. That fight has been scrapped due to injury. And it looks like we've got a couple new fights for UFC Fight Night 112. Daryl Hosher and Devin Powell and Alex Garcia against Tim Means.
Oh, nice. Those are quality fights.
I think that's the Oklahoma City fight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as, we talked about this fight last week. Emil Meek against Nordine Talib at UFC Fight Night 109 has been changed. Meek is down with an injury, so they're going to be putting in a Swedish fighter, Oliver Enkamp.
Okay, well, I hope Nordine does well in that fight. That's another guy, though, that he's been around for so long and he's had so many injuries that I always kind of wonder with him which one's going to be the last one, because you never know with his fights.
Yeah, but you never know with any fighter if it's their last fight. You can get one serious knockout. You could be a young prospect. You get rocked really bad.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, though, but wasn't his season of The Ultimate Fighter the one where he got the broken fucking jaw?
I think so. It's been a while since I've seen that season.
Yeah, either that or his retina became detached. That might have been a different fight at a different time, but man, Nardine's had some hellacious injuries over the years.
Now, I want to give you the floor, so to speak. I think you spoke to one Kimbo Slice Jr.
That's right, a.k.a. Baby Slice. I don't know if he's getting onto the main card per se. He might be the featured fight on Spike.com before the main card, but he's definitely being factored in a major way. And part of the reason for that is because Michael Venom Page had, some sort of injury that caused him to pull out of the fight with Barbaric Derek Anderson. So with that fight scrapped, they moved an Alex Lahore fight to the main card, and they're also heavily promoting the Baby Slice fight, even though I think because he's 0-1 at this point, they probably can't consider that a TV fight, so I think that's just headlining the preliminary portion. But he's fighting a guy who is 0-0 named Daryl DJ Griffin.
Oh boy. Not saying tomato can, but,
Well, he's got to turn it around after the fight with Aaron Hamilton because, as he admitted when I interviewed him, he's capable of winning the fight, but his technique was not great, and on the ground he was giving up positions that allowed Hamilton to get back to his feet. And now, with more time and more work at the body shop in California, he feels like he's corrected those problems. And in fact, he seemed pretty confident when I talked to him. He said, you know what? I'm going after the lightweight division after this catchweight fight. Give me 2 years and I'll be untouchable.
0-0 fighter against Baby Slice. Man,
Against
I
the
gotta
0-1
go.
fighter. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But I feel like because, and I did ask him this, I was like, you got a famous father, respect to your late father. Does that give you any additional pressure? And he said, the only pressure I put on is my own pressure to be great. It's like he's not letting his father's legacy hang over his head. He wants to be his own man, but he also knows, because his dad was famous, he kind of prepared him for this. He's like, this is what your life is going to be like as my son being a fighter in MMA. So he knows the deal. He knows the expectations, but all he does is, as he said to me over and over again, he just works hard every day. As hard as he works even harder the next day. He just goes into training camp and works hard because he's going to go out there and prove his point. I hope he does.
Now, I don't know much about this next story. Hopefully you can help me out with this, but Michael Chiavello apparently is done announcing in North America?
Yeah, I'm not quite clear on the particulars of that one as well. So, what's your take on it? What have you heard? Give us.
I heard that he was on the MMA Junkie radio show today, I believe, and I kept seeing the hashtag farewell tour. I was like, what do you mean farewell tour? So I clicked the link, and all these tweets coming in. Apparently he was saying, come, reminisce with some memories. I'm, on my farewell tour tonight on MMA Junkie radio. And I was like, something's not right here. I didn't know the whole story, but I was at work, so I couldn't really catch much of the details. But from what I could gather, it sounds like he's done, I believe he's done broadcasting in North America, or Access TV at the earliest.
Yeah, I can't find any particular transcript that verifies what he would have said. The closest I can get to it is a Reddit thread. So I don't generally use that as a source, but what they're saying here comes directly from his own Twitter account. So I'm just going to read you that.
Okay.
As I count down my last few weeks in the USA and with Access TV, join me tonight for my last ever CAS MMA at Jay Birchfield Jr. Gonna be a ripper. So based on that and based on the Reddit thread and based on what you said, it seems that it's pretty clear he's moving back to Australia.
Which sucks because he is one of the, if not the most talented announcers out there for mixed martial arts.
No, I agree, and never quite got his due to the degree that he deserves, but I will say that he will go down as one of the most legendary calls in MMA, even if we never get to hear him again. His "Good night, Irene" is one of my all-time favorite calls in the sport.
Yep, no, absolutely, and it's one of those situations where it's sad to see him go, but I don't know, part of me thinks maybe he'll come back one day. You never say never. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point.
But I'm sure as much as he misses his wife, whose name really is Irene, he probably wants to spend a lot more time with her, especially, after being on the road for so many years, traveling the world, doing so many shows. I'm sure it would be nice to just be home and spend some quality time with her.
Now we got some Hollywood news here, Stevie. Apparently there is a MMA movie in the works starring Blake Lively.
Okay.
Apparently this is the same director who was once attached to the Roadhouse reboot. So there's an MMA tie there, but MMA and Blake Lively, I'm kind of scratching my head on that one, to be honest. I don't see Blake Lively and think, oh, she could be playing a fighter. But you never know. The California State Athletic Commission has denied Josh Thompson's appeal to overturn his KO to Pitbull Ferrari at Bellator 172.
I pretty much said that was going to be the case. 99 times out of 100, you're not getting your fight overturned.
What was his reasoning for this?
That he got hit with a headbutt that made him loopy before he got hit with the knockout.
And you're more of the Bellator expert than I am. Does this have merit?
The headbutt argument has merit, but the headbutt did not equal or exceed the punches that Frary hit him with, which would have leveled a rhino.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Let's move on to what we teased earlier in the show, Luke Rockhold. Basically, I wish I knew what the spark was for this one, but I just caught the tail end of it with Rockhold saying, think before you run your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when it comes to saying stuff like that to your boss, I mean, I don't know if I'd be working if I said to my boss that, you know?
Yeah. I think fighters have a completely different outlook on what they can and can't say than you or I would have in our respective mediums of employment.
Mm-hmm. And, I think it was Dave Meltzer who said, fighters make pennies to the dollar sometimes. And it's true. Mm. They don't get paid what they should get paid.
No, especially, let's just use the previous example we just talked about, which was that Michael Page pulled out of the fight with Derek Anderson. Yeah. How screwed is that for Derek Anderson that not only does he not get a payday, but he paid for a full fight camp and did all his preparations, and he's out all that money too.
Well, Pettis missed out on his fight, but because it was such a late withdrawal, if Pettis made weight, he'd still get his show money.
Right, that's true.
Now, as far as MVP, I believe it was a knee injury.
Yeah.
And that worries me because I don't think that's the first time he's hurt his knee.
He's had several injuries over the years, so it's hard to say which one is more significant, but I do question a guy who relies on his flashy striking and his knees to the degree that Page does, if that bodes well.
I think with Rockhold, he was basically questioning why GSP gets the automatic title shot, and I forget who said it on Twitter, but someone goes, because he's one of the best in the world? Like, his record speaks for itself. I mean, how many avenged losses does he have?
Yeah.
Like, non-avenged losses. Everyone that beat GSP has gotten their comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as another fight announcement, Chris Weidman is going to be fighting Kelvin Gastelum at UFC Fox 25.
Okay.
And to the surprise of no one, Weidman is the favorite.
Yeah, I would think so.
But Kelvin's got something to prove after being having his last fight overturned due to marijuana metabolites. So,
yeah.
Now we'll talk about this more next week because this is just hitting the news as we're recording the show tonight. But California is talking about a weight cutting plan, and it's a 10-point plan right now. So there's changes coming to California when it comes to weight cutting, and we're going to talk about that next week.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so let's talk about Bellator in jolly old England this weekend. Bellator 179. I'm not sure if our friend Anchor's going to the show, but hopefully he is. It's at the SSE Arena in London, and it will air on Spike TV.
That's right. And what do you want to do, bottom to the top or top to the bottom?
Let's go top to the bottom because some of these fights we know won't be broadcast.
Right. So, main event, Rory MacDonald in his first fight for Bellator, taking on Paul Semtex Daley, renowned knockout artist. Almost just unbelievable if you don't watch some of his highlights how good his hands and knees are. You have to see it for yourself or you're not going to believe me when I say he's a one-hit artist. He can literally, anybody can be dropped in their tracks by Paul Daley. But that's always the question with him is, can he land that one shot? And sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't. And Rory MacDonald has said going into this fight that he's going back to his roots. He's going back to David Lee. He's going back and forth between there and TriStar. He's getting back to being just a complete beast in every aspect of mixed martial arts to be the dominant fighter that he once was. So, proof's in the pudding, son. Come out and do it on Friday night.
So, an easy fight for MacDonald then?
The way he's telling it, it is. And the way Daley is telling it, he says, I fought guys that are better than Rory MacDonald. Douglas Lima is better. Rory doesn't scare me.
What was the whole thing about, I'm gonna shock the world?
Yeah, he kept saying that over and over again in the conference call. And Daley is the kind of guy who could do it. Don't count him out.
When it comes to the main event here for MacDonald and Daley, MacDonald's got a lot to prove here.
Especially off back-to-back losses.
And he's been on the shelf for a long time. I mean,
Although
30?
He says that year off made him better.
Yeah, but 2.5 years without a win?
Yeah, well, up till a minute into the 5th round of that fight with Lawler, he was arguably winning.
Yeah, and then that was something else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Daley, I mean, a win here, a dominant win against MacDonald, does it do a lot for him, or is he just fighting a guy who hasn't won a fight in 32 months?
No, it's actually a number one contenders fight, and Scott Coker as much as said so. He said the winner of this fight is gonna face the winner of Lima and Larkin coming up, so.
So even if it's a snore fest, we get a number one contender out of this. Okay.
Oh, okay, if they both totally shit the bed, maybe not, but I kinda doubt that's gonna happen here.
One fight I'm looking forward to is Liam McGarry and Linton Vassell.
Yeah, hopefully you checked out both of my interviews with them this week on MMA Mania.
There you go. The question is, and it's gonna sound weird, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but who wants this more?
That is a weird question because they're friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the Miocic JDS fight.
Right. Like, they don't really want to hurt each other, but they also have to go out there and do what they have to do to earn a living. Or, let me put it the way Liam McGarry said. He's like, you know how it is when you go to a bar and you have a few drinks and you start to tussle with your friends? It's like that.
Except someone's gonna bleed. And there's doctors right there.
Exactly. There are some differences, but basically what he was saying was he could go out there and do it for fun and not make it personal.
I'm leaning more towards McGarry, but that's more of a gut feeling than anything else.
I want to say I totally agree, but I also think that coming off 2 quality wins over Emmanuel Newton and Francis Carmont, I don't think Vassell can be taken lightly, especially since he has been a number one contender in the past.
It's true.
And the size difference, there is not a huge size discrepancy. I mean, normally McGarry towers over his opponents, but in this case, it's 6'6" versus 6'4", so he's not as huge as he is to most of his opponents.
Do you think the weigh-ins would change the betting on this fight, or do you think it's going to stay where it is? I mean, this fight, some fights we say, well, at the weigh-in, some guy will look better shaped than the other, so the odds will shift, but these two guys are so, not evenly 100%, but it's a closer fight than people might give.
I think so too. That's why I want to say, if I agree with you that McGarry is the favorite or the winner, it's not by an overwhelming margin.
No.
I mean, the problem with fighting somebody like Brett McDermott, and I don't mean to take anything away from Brett, is that just doesn't really tell us where Liam McGarry is at right now. This fight will prove whether McGarry is getting back into contention.
Chick Congo against Augusto Sakai.
Yeah.
Sakai is the win in this fight, right?
Oh, I can't really see a way for Sakai to win, and that's kind of a shame because I feel like he's a guy who can bring some life to that heavyweight division. He's young. He's only 25 years old. He has technically never lost a fight, although his fight with Dan Charles was a draw. And he's got knockout power. He's actually done it to quite a few people, 7 out of 9 of his wins. The problem is that going against Congo, being as experienced as he is, and as big and as strong as he is, now he's like the size almost of Liam McGarry, except at heavyweight instead of light heavyweight. This is a big, strong, powerful dude, and he uses that to bully his opponents. He gets them down to the ground and doesn't let them do shit. All 6'4" and 240 plus pounds, a Czech Congo on top of you, you ain't going anywhere. And that doesn't always make for a great fight, because sometimes he just gets guys down and just dominates them there and doesn't finish. And it's not to say he isn't capable of finishing. He's got a ton of knockouts on his record, but that's not the way I see this fight going. I see him taking Sakai down and sitting on him a lot.
If this fight was in Japan in a ring, you might have better chances.
Yeah,
because
if
of
you
a
had
rope break.
Or a judge holding up a yellow card. Action!
Yeah.
Action!
Yeah. Or a rope break even.
Yeah.
Because Kongo's winning this fight.
I think so too. And like I said, it's kind of a shame. I'm not disrespecting Kongo because he's a quality fighter. He deserves the wins. But if you want to inject some lifeblood into the heavyweight division and really get the ball rolling on crowning a new champion, I mean, how many wins does Kongo have to have before they finally give it to him? It doesn't seem like they're going to. It seems like they're waiting for somebody to come along to beat him. And I don't think Sakai is that guy.
Okay, well, let's move on to Dan Edwards and Alex Lahore.
Yes. And this is a mismatch, and Lahore is going to eat him for lunch.
First round?
First round, possibly first minute.
Oof.
Have you seen Dan Edwards' record? Have you looked at it?
Well, yeah, but...
Okay, let me tell the listeners, because they might not have. He was 12-14 and won his last two fights just to get back to 500.
So you're saying there's a chance?
A chance of Dan Edwards winning 3 in a row? Perhaps, but I feel like they picked this fight to move up to the main card because of what happened to Page, because they wanted a fight with somebody who would win impressively on television. And Lahore is a prospect and likely to do that.
Will you be surprised if this fight goes into the second or even the third round?
If this one goes to the judges, I'm going to be fucking shocked.
And Baby Slice and DJ Griffin. I think we're both picking Baby Slice in this one.
Yes, I actually picked him the last time around too, as I recall. So, like I said to him when I talked to him, I thought you had some winning moments in that fight. It just didn't go your way at the end. So, as long as he corrected those little mistakes he talked about himself, he'll be okay.
Now, as far as the prelims on Spike.com, there's one fight here, Lucas Parobiak against Neil Grove. Is there any relation to Kendall?
No, not any relation to Kendall the Spider Grove. But Neil Grove is a quality fighter who's been around the world and back again. He had a long tenure in Bellator from like Bellator 24 to Bellator 56, was one of the veterans of their heavyweight division, but he's also fought in London, in India, in UFC, in Cage Rage. He's been all over the place. He's a veteran of the sport.
And no, Nathan Jones at the welterweight against Umar Kiani is not the same Nathan Jones you're thinking of, wrestling fans.
No, not at all.
I don't think Nathan Jones would be considered a welterweight.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for the show this week. Stevie, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
We're going to talk about Backlash, and we're going to talk about the best of the Super Juniors.
Oh, that's this weekend, Backlash. I almost forgot. That's going to be a good show, actually. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I believe the first round will have taken place by the time most people are listening to this.
And Backlash, the junior tournament, and of course, Stevie, I'm sure you will talk about the 2 new Japanese signings for WWE as well.
Of course.
Because those 2 women fighters from Japan, one of them was Stardom. Actually, you should get Sierra on the phone for that show because she could probably go in depth about those 2 fighters. The other one fought last, I believe, in Lucha Underground, so that should be really good. She fought Dark Pentagon, I believe, in a match that it was pretty good to see her in Lucha, and now it's like, oh good, she's going to be training NXT soon. Oh, this will be fun. Hopefully Asuka's still there, but I don't think so.
Right. So yeah, I'd love to have Sierra on to talk about that, but I also think our resident expert on all things Japanese and all things women's wrestling, I think Abby can handle it quite well too.
All right. Well, any final plugs you want to throw out there this week?
Yeah, go to MMAmania.com because you can find my interviews with Baby Slice, with Linton Vassell, and Liam McGarry, plus my predictions for Bellator 179, plus all of my fight coverage this week. MMAmania.com is your hookup.
And I just also want to give a belated Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. As someone said to me on Twitter, without the mothers, we all wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's true. Truer words have never been spoken. So thank you to your mom, and thank you to mine, and thank you to our wives' moms as well.
Absolutely. For Stevie J, I'm Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.